planned peace in the Balkans. A new report that NATO bombers have taken a tragic civilian toll as diplomats search for a way out of the Kosovo crisis. Milosevic makes a rare public appearance, and CBS News has fresh information that the captured U.S. soldiers are in good condition.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather reporting tonight from Yugoslavia.
Good evening from Belgrade. Air raid sirens sounded in broad daylight today in this capital city amid increasing signs that the aerial bombardment is taking a toll on this still defiant Serbian nation. And the toll may have taken on tragic new proportions. Collateral damage has taken on new meanings tonight with these pictures of what is alleged to be Albanian refugees struck by a NATO missile. Serbian officials claim that there were two separate attacks, killing, they say, dozens of civilians, 60 plus or more. NATO acknowledges that it was targeting what it says were military convoys in the general area. NATO says it's continuing to investigate this whole situation. The intensified air campaign also triggered rare daytime air raid sirens in Serbia's main cities, including Belgrade, where CBS News was filming for our morning broadcast. Suddenly there were a couple of very clear thump-thumps in the not-too-far distance, and then the air raid sirens started going off again. Even as the air raid sirens sounded, a relaxed-looking President Slobodan Milosevic, in a rare public appearance, was personally rolling out the red carpet for President Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus. He came to Belgrade to offer his country's support for Serbia. Belarus is a close ally of both Russia and Yugoslavia and has been an outspoken opponent of the NATO bombing campaign. And later today, in his first full address since the bombing began, President Milosevic vowed to keep on fighting. Milosevic said it was absurd that Yugoslavia should accept what he called NATO's, quote, fascist approach, and said he would not accept any peacekeeping force that was controlled by NATO. And while a new German initiative, which would involve the United Nations in the negotiations, was welcomed by NATO today, NATO so far has held off actually endorsing it. In a late-breaking development, CBS News has been told by NATO sources that the KLA, that's the Kosovo Liberation Army, has opened an alley or corridor in southwestern Kosovo and has moved what's called a KLA counteroffensive into that region of Kosovo, and the KLA leaders say they intend to stay. Evidence of what's happening on the ground inside Kosovo continues to mount. David Martin has details from the Pentagon.
Something horrible happened in Kosovo this afternoon. The Serbs say NATO bombs hit this convoy of refugees and this nearby home, killing 64. U.S. and NATO officials say they did hit a convoy, but not these tractors.
We did hit military vehicles in a convoy. We're quite sure that we only hit military vehicles.
The Pentagon says NATO planes broke off their attack when they spotted civilian vehicles and have no evidence they are responsible for this carnage. And Pentagon officials say they have received reports of a separate incident in which Serb aircraft deliberately attacked a convoy of 600 refugees.
We are receiving reports that Yugoslav aircraft have been used to attack refugee convoys in Kosovo.
The German defense minister said these refugees in all likelihood were shelled by Serb forces. Whatever the truth of this particular tragedy, there is no doubt the refugees still trapped inside Kosovo are suffering horribly.
One of the most appalling stories is simply of large numbers of Kosovo Albanians being herded around Kosovo like groups of migratory cattle.
The estimate of people driven from their homes but unable to reach the relative comfort of refugee camps now stands at 500,000. And there is no real hope of getting aid to them until the Serb army is first defeated.
The only way we can bring relief to the suffering people of Kosovo is to speed up the military campaign and reverse the Serb aggression.
The military campaign will speed up as more planes are thrown into the battle.
Every day Milosevic has less, and every day we have more. So this situation cannot go on indefinitely.
Unfortunately, the same is also true of the people of Kosovo. Every day they have less, and they cannot go on indefinitely. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
I sat down this afternoon for an interview with the Deputy Prime Minister of Yugoslavia, and I asked him about the captured U.S. soldiers. What can you tell me about the 3 U.S. soldiers who were captured?
They are treated in the best way. They captured in our territory, and this state, even under such terrible circumstances, will respect Geneva Convention. It means no trial, absolutely no trial, and the prisoners of the war would be released immediately after the stopping of the war.
Is there any chance that I could be taken to see them just to bear witness that they are okay, that they're all right?
I'm quite sure they're very, very all right. But I know, you know, I know even our side was ready to release them during the war. But unfortunately, NATO intensifies atrocities.
Is it fair now to consider them as, quote, hostages?
No, hostages. What does it mean, hostages? No. They're just captured soldiers, foreign soldiers captured on our territory during the war.
The German peace plan was just one move on the diplomatic chessboard today, as the White House maintained it is keeping all options open. Scott Pelley brings us up to date on that.
There was brief talk of compromise today when the German government suggested that if Serb forces began to retreat from Kosovo, then NATO might suspend bombing for 24 hours. The White House reacted sharply. No deals before victory.
The important thing to note here is there will be no cessation of this air campaign until the demands are met.
Milosevic essentially needs to capitulate before any of these other things can be put in motion.
For this to move forward in motion, he has to meet the demands that NATO has laid forward, and if that's capitulation, then he needs to capitulate.
The UN Secretary General told European leaders that bombing alone will not bring peace. Kofi Annan urged diplomacy and a political solution.
It is difficult, it's delicate. I'm not sure we will succeed, but we have to try.
The Secretary of State laid down NATO's minimum terms for peace.
Serb security forces must leave so that the refugees can re-enter. An international security presence must be permitted. And the people of Kosovo must be given the democratic self-government they have long deserved.
Secretary Albright also said that it is still U.S. policy that Kosovo should ultimately remain part of Yugoslavia. But she added, after all the horrendous things we've seen, that is hard to imagine. Scott Pelley, CBS News, the White House.
I'll be back with more from Belgrade in a moment.
It's acid. It burns. It travels up.
Like a fire in my chest.
A terrible taste in my throat.
If heartburn has you by the throat, you may have the toughest heartburn. Acid reflux. For this, doctors recommend Gaviscon. Only regular Gaviscon forms a soothing, protective barrier to help keep stomach acid down, where it belongs. Mylanta can't, Pepsidase C can't. Only Gaviscon can.
Better.
Relief.
Sleep.
When heartburn has you by the throat, get Gaviscon.
With Days Inn hotels in over 1,800 cities and towns, you can go as far as you want. We'll always be right down the lane. Days Inn. There you go.
The '99 Mitsubishi Eclipse. Postponed adulthood, starting in under $17,500. Now available with 0.9% APR financing for 48 months.
Sis, I snooped in your medicine cabinet. So? You switched to X X-Lax. Yeah, Correctol works with an artificial chemical. X-Lax works with natural senna. Very effectively, too. You tried it. What a find. What a snoop.
Good morning, guaranteed.
More refugees came across the border into Albania today, each with a story of terror and abuse. CBS's Mark Phillips is with them.
They're still coming. Each day brings a new influx of misery, sometimes by a new route. These pictures, taken by an amateur photographer, are of refugees who traveled through the Yugoslav Republic of Montenegro to reach the dubious haven of Albania. That they'd been through an ordeal was obvious. Every possible method, including a very unorthodox one, was used to try to revive this woman, unsuccessfully. The new arrivals add to the burden of the multinational relief airlift being run in often adverse conditions out of Tirana Airport.
Jago 79er, copy that, sir. You have a safe flight. We'll see you next Friday.
But despite the fact that U.S. air controllers are coordinating as many as 80 American, French, even United Arab Emirates and other relief flights a day, and despite the continuous arrival of more aid, there's still more demand than supply. Technology and generosity have so far kept people alive and kept a humanitarian crisis from turning into a disaster, but the refugee problem here is approaching a crucial stage, the point at which a short-term crisis becomes a long-term condition. So in the camps around the country, they're building. With the time it takes to get materials and get things done here, they're already thinking about winter.
If we're not returned to Kosovo within 6 weeks, we're going to start having to winterize this place. We're concerned about the health risks that winter will entail. So time is really growing short for these people.
Time to consider their fate and to adjust to a life in exile is right now about all the Kosovo refugees have left. Mark Phillips, CBS News, Tirana.
I'll be back with more from here in Belgrade a little later in the broadcast. Up next on the CBS Evening News, John Roberts with more news from New York.
You're not taking that laxative. Look, the label says it may cause cramping.
All these laxatives have stimulants that may cause cramping. Phillips doesn't. It's stimulant-free.
What a rare bird.
She sure is. Phillips, effective relief without harsh stimulants.
Recently, we flew Carrie Eisenhandler and her family to Johns Hopkins for surgery to correct a pre-existing heart condition. We flew Eric Gonzalez to the Cleveland Clinic because of their renowned expertise in treating Crohn's disease. Hopefully, these stories fly in the face of the belief that healthcare isn't what it used to be. We're Aetna U.S. Healthcare, raising the quality of healthcare in America.
It's April. Can showers be very far behind? Remember to protect your deck with Thompson's Wood Protector. Rain, sun, mildew. Nothing we make works harder, longer, so nothing can rain on your parade. Thompson's Wood Protector. It never takes a day off.
She's growing up 1,000 miles from her grandparents. 1,000 miles from the way you grew up, but now her time with them can be unlimited. Now Sprint gives you 2 months of unlimited weekend calling and 1,000 weekend minutes every month after that. So for just $25 a month, you can make 1,000 miles disappear. Isn't that the point of contact? Call 1-800-PIN-DROP now.
Tonight on 60 Minutes 2. Think your family has differences? One side of this family used to own the other.
Sound like white folks.
You'll meet them tonight.
Former Vice President Dan Quayle officially announced his candidacy today for the Republican presidential nomination and came out swinging.
We're coming to the end of a dishonest decade of Bill Clinton and Al Gore. It is time that we work to reclaim the values that made America great in the first place.
Quayle, speaking in his hometown of Huntington, Indiana, called for a 30% across-the-board tax cut and said he has more experience than any other presidential candidate. On Capitol Hill, the last person you'd expect to say he favors abolishing the independent counsel law turns out to be the last one appointed under the law, as CBS's chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer reports.
How's this for a surprise?
Ken Starr, of all people, has decided having independent counsels is a bad idea that ought to be stopped. He told senators the concept is
structurally unsound, constitutionally dubious, and in overstating the degree of institutional independence, disingenuous.
That left one senator in mock surprise that independent counsel Starr hadn't closed his office yet.
I assumed that you would come here today and prevail in this committee and say, stop me before I prosecute again under this unwise statute.
But Starr said you didn't have to agree with the law to enforce it. And he bristled at criticism of how he handled his $40 million, 4.5-year investigation.
Many of the issues that have been bruited about the American public and have come to be accepted as fact are calumnies and false. Absolute falsehoods. And individuals have gone out of the grand jury and have lied to the American people about what transpired.
And the president shouldn't breathe easy just yet.
Do you have jurisdiction to prosecute the president criminally after his term of office expires?
Yes.
Starr didn't elaborate on that, but meantime, the feeling grows here that Congress will allow the expiring independent counsel law to die. More and more here feel it just gives prosecutors too much power. They cite Starr as the prime example. John.
Bob Schieffer on Capitol Hill. The latest auto insurance industry crash test results for the model year 1999 vehicles came out today. Out of 10 cars and minivans tested, only 2 earned good overall ratings. 5 others were found to be acceptable, and 2 got poor ratings. And as CBS's Bob Orr reports, automakers are now making maximum use of these tests because safety sells.
Consumers searching for the safest car just love these tests that crash cars into walls, push them into pillars, and slam them into each other. Saab even takes its crush cars to auto shows as a marketing pitch.
5 years ago, I wanted to know how many cup holders I had. That was really important to me. Well, today I want to know how many airbags I'm going to have. Am I going to have rear airbags, side airbags, front airbags?
Manufacturers have noticed that safety sells. After years of challenging these independent crash tests, some car companies are now embracing them. Take Toyota. Its 1996 Previa flunked this crash test. The car maker soon rolled out a new minivan, the Sienna. Built to crash well, it did. The crash test became a commercial, and sales went up.
There's absolutely no question that the government crash tests and our crash tests are forcing the manufacturers to design and build safer vehicles.
Good test results are starred on the government's webpage, viewed by more than 1 million people a year, and they're touted by automakers.
And the government's highest rating in both.
So the race to sell safety is on. From crash tests to trunk release latches to side and even knee airbags, car makers are taking safety seriously, especially as long as it sells cars. Bob Orr, CBS News, Washington.
One of the most famous people you never heard of has died. Jean Vanderpyle was her name, and this was her voice.
Fred Flintstone, I'm talking to you. Fred? What in the world are you doing?
Jean Vanderpyle, the voice of Wilma Flintstone, was 79 years old. Still ahead, a picture that took 13 billion years to get here.
Life's an adventure because you're over 50 and still exploring. So take the Centrum made just for you, Centrum Silver, with age-essential nutrients specially adjusted to keep pace with your changing nutritional needs. Centrum Silver, it's a great time to be silver.
If you have arthritis pain that lasts all day, presenting Tylenol Arthritis Extended Relief. It lasts up to twice as long as regular aspirin without irritating your stomach. Tylenol Arthritis. Take comfort in our strength.
But I wasn't gone long.
Your husband was right here?
I went to check the tickets.
Bingo.
What?
Have you checked the Chili Dog Express?
Oh, no. Hot dogs give Jack indigestion and heartburn.
Not this time.
What is it?
Looks like the remains of the minty fresh Pepsid AC chewable.
Chewable?
Now the first chewable that stops heartburn before it starts. Great tasting Pepsid AC chewables.
Jack?
Start living heartburn-free with new Pepcid AC chewables.
When Diane initially came into the office, her time horizon for investing her money was rather short-term.
It was right after college. I was going to turn over the money pretty quickly to pay for graduate school.
Since then, her objective has changed.
I've always had this kind of long-term goal in mind, which is starting my own business.
What that means, actually, invest more aggressively because her time horizon had lengthened. She knows herself. She knows her goals. She knows her tolerance for risk. She's learned about the tools that Schwab has to assist her in meeting those goals.
That All Days Freshness takes me to a new perspective, on a different path, through open doors.
Introducing something new, individually wrapped All Days panty liners. A unique core and fresh weave help absorb moisture and odor. And now they're wrapped for freshness anytime, anywhere.
For a joyride,
To important gatherings.
to another world.
New individually wrapped All Days panty liners from Always. Feeling fresh is being free.
She went to the hospital for treatment. Instead, doctors made her part of an experiment. She says it ruined her life. 48 Hours investigates Thursday.
Hubble telescope astronomers zooming back light years into space and time today showed off the most distant object ever detected, a 13-billion-year-old galaxy at the edges of the known universe and the dawn of time. In the skies over Texas, a bolt from the blue today north of Houston. A possible tornado tore up trees and tore into a shopping center, peeling back rooftops from a row of stores. At least one business was destroyed, but no injuries were reported. U.S. health officials have approved a new and easy-to-take test to predict which heart patients are most at risk of dying from cardiac arrest. It's a souped-up treadmill test using special electrodes to monitor heart activity. Up to now, it took a dangerous surgical procedure to make the same diagnosis. President Clinton today proposed what are called universal savings accounts to help Americans save for retirement. USAs, as they're called, would be similar to 401k plans that many people now have at work. For those eligible, the government would match contributions to the account up to $700 per couple per year. And now, meet the winner of the biggest individual lottery prize in U.S. history. In Braintree, Massachusetts, live-in babysitter Maria Grasso stepped forward today. The 54-year-old immigrant from Chile opted for an immediate $104 million payout, $70 million after taxes, instead of $197 million over time.
I have a large family in Chile. I don't play always. This was a big one, and I really took a chance, and here I am.
Last week, a Nigerian immigrant taxi driver at this Boston cab company was thought to have won, but didn't. Grasso was asked if she had any words for him.
I felt sorry for him, really.
The odds of winning that jackpot were about 1 in 76 million. Fortunes are being made and lost on Wall Street. The Dow gained 16 points today to close at its third straight record high. Over on the NASDAQ, stock prices plunged 76 points, or about 3%. In a moment, Dan Rather will be back from Belgrade with some thoughts about the high-stakes game of chess in the Balkans.
Around here, we like a salad with our dinner.
See, this is a monster piece of lettuce.
And the people who make craft dressings have always seemed to know what we like. You know, a lot of us grew up on the creamy taste of Kraft Ranch.
More.
And who knows, maybe they even know how good it feels when we see our kids dive into a salad. I guess they just know what we like. Around here, the dressing is Kraft.
Which plant food do America's top professional growers use? Let's go right to the source.
Bonnie Plant Farm grows over 100 million plants. Got to have the right stuff. Every time we water, we feed these plants for Miracle-Gro. The quality, the vitality, the character of the plant is much better. Look at the roots on this rascal. It wraps all the way around the plant. And it's done this because it has been fed with Miracle-Gro for 6 weeks. We use the very best seed and the very best plant food, Miracle-Gro.
I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through.
Have you
seen Transitions lenses lately? Indoors, the changing tint is clearer. Outdoors, they're the darkest Transitions lenses ever. For all-day comfort and convenience, Transitions lenses, right in any light.
I'll be seeing you.
Visit our website or call 1-877-4-TRANSITIONS.
Getting those urban cowboys on horses was trying enough. And you throw in some serious chili, we're talking major heartburn. We were way out there, and this cowboy, he pulls this Zantac 75 out of his saddlebag. I said, what are you, a Zantac salesman? He said, no, I'm a doctor.
The medicine in Zantac 75 is the #1 doctor-prescribed acid reducer. It relieves even your toughest heartburn, controlling acid for up to 12 hours.
Hats off to you, Doc.
Zantac 75 for tough heartburn. Doctors know.
This morning at 10, these streets echoed with the wail of air raid sirens and the distant thumps of bombing. Now it's popular music, loud popular music. It is, they say, their way of symbolizing, signaling NATO. Bombing won't work.
The message is very short. Leave us alone and let us live.
We are not guilty for things about politicians and things about Kosovo, Poland, and everything about that. Please, please, please stop bomb us.
I hope that when this war get end, that my country will rebuild better.
Who is going to pay for that?
Only us.
Nobody talks, at least not publicly, about any Serbian responsibility or responsibility of Slobodan Milosevic for the war. The impression is clearly left, they don't talk about it because they don't believe it. However the rest of the world may see them, the Serbians see themselves as victims. End game. It's a chess word when a decisive move is made by one side, making the outcome inescapable. That kind of decisive turning point has yet to come in the deadly contest between Brussels and Belgrade. Call this middle game. NATO insists it will end with capitulation. The Serb military out of Kosovo, the safe return and autonomy for ethnic Albanians, and an international peacekeeping force on Yugoslavia's Kosovo soil. Still resolute and defiant, Slobodan Milosevic and his people are locked in a war of attrition. They believe if they don't capitulate, they win. But they know that the longer it lasts, the more damage, the more suffering, the more death. Victory and surrender are in black and white. The middle game is painted in shades of gray. Today's scorned peace initiative may yet become tomorrow's workable compromise. This is not just a war of missiles and bombs. It is also a war of wits and will. And that's part of our world tonight. Don't forget 60 Minutes 2 later this evening. Mike Wallace has a preview for you.
We'll introduce you to the Hairstons, a unique American family with two stories to tell. One side used to own the other. Plus, we have found some new answers about the devastating, man-killing explosion on the battleship Iowa. After 10 years, why one man, the wrong man, was blamed.
For the CBS Evening News, Dan Rather reporting from Belgrade. Good night.
For news 24 hours a day, CBS.com on the internet and on our interactive partner, America Online at keyword CBS News.
How will the